the intention with the character of Haley, both in the book and translating that to the screen, is to demonstrate that racism can exist in so many different forms and rear its ugly head in a lot of different ways. And oftentimes, people are not aware of the ways in which they are being racist or prejudiced, because they are microaggressions, not as blatant as how we usually conceptualize racism, but they still hurt, and it's something that we as Black people navigate every single day. I feel like the notion that, you know, I don't see color, it relies upon the idea that we live in a post-racial society, which we don't. Exactly. We do not. Sorry to break it to you, white hippies with locks. But we don't. And so I think that's indicative of a sort of privilege. If you are able to think of the world as existing as post-racial, you're obviously ignorant to the realities that Black people and Black communities are facing every day.
I could relate a lot to the character. Being from New Zealand, it's a little different to the States for sure. Like I definitely learned a lot about what's going on in the States. And for someone like Chris, who is automatically born into privilege, it's hard for someone like him to truly understand the depths of struggle that minorities experience. Right. And what I probably learned most from the character is that you will never know what it's like. I will never know what it's like. As long as my skin is white, I will never know what it's like to be Black. And I think that's also what Chris learned towards the end.
The characters in this film and in the book really spoke to me. You know, I know who they are. I grew up with them. I was raised by them. I grew up in a single-parent household, and oftentimes remember my mother, paying bills, once a month and sitting down with the checkbook and coming to tears, because the checkbook didn't balance. You know what I mean? And being upstairs and hearing her weep, and what she would say, if not month after month, every other month, would say, "I'm tired." Right. Do you know what I mean? And you realize that these families, these parents, these spouses, they're tired, they're exhausted, but they have no choice but to deal with the hard times day after day. They have to be resilient. And that's why we have so much character. That's why we have so much inner strength, is because of what we're forced to do. But the beauty of it, what my mother didn't have, and what Lisa and Matt have, is they have each other. Yeah. And I think the beauty in what this film represents and what it shows is that there is Black love. It does exist. There is a mutual respect amongst husbands and wives, you know what I mean, that are Black, and that they love each other, that they love their children, and they will do what they need to do and make a way for them. The issue that you deal with is that you realize, wow, my daughter has to be an adult now at 16. And you're hoping, you're trying as much as you can to keep her from that. And it hurts to say, I have to usher her now into the world at 16. Yeah. Where white families, dominant culture, they don't have to do that. Exactly. And that's constantly what we have to do. And it's moments like that creates the fatigue. Right. You know what I mean? And the constant pain within us, because we have to raise our Black children to be adults at a young age.
That's what a lot of people, I feel, miss. King wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't a villain. He was doing what he thought was right. Totally. So him talking to Starr and saying, look, shut your mouth, because that's all well and good when you're on the news or when you're in your house, but you got to make it from home to school. And that goes back, to what we were talking about earlier. There is no safe haven. There is no, witness protection for people who talk out about what happens in the neighborhoods. I feel like as a community, as a people, as men, our job is to protect women and children. Right. And in this generation, we have failed miserably. So until we do our job, the idea of speaking out against what's happening in our community is practically impossible, because there's no one to protect you.
Well, it starts with healing, I think it starts with healing, and I think Starr is pushed towards having to heal after this traumatic event. The the disparate parts of herself. She has to confront the fact that she has compartmentalized herself, that she hasn't allowed herself to exist authentically and fully in the world, because this event catalyzes that. And when she does that healing, the result is that she finds her authentic voice and she becomes so much less afraid to use it because she doesn't feel apologetic about using it. So I guess the result of that is finding your voice and your strength and your power and deciding, making the conscious decision not to walk into the world already apologizing. Right. Because that's what Starr does in her school, you know. When you see her at the beginning of the film, she walks into that environment already apologetic for who she is. But you get to see her come to a place where she no longer does that.
One thing as a young adult author you always worry about is the reader saying, well, this wasn't in the book, this wasn't in the movie. That was always in the back of my head. But the big thing was I never wanted this story to be sanitized. And the studio never wanted it to be sanitized. George never wanted it to be sanitized. He wanted it to be raw, authentic. And at first, you know, you have that worry, are they going to make this real Hollywood? They didn't. They kept it 100% authentic. So for me, early on, those fears were put to ease.
Going into it, I felt weighty because it felt important, and the book was already so important to me. I knew how much potential the story had to reach people, to put this conversation into a form that is vulnerable and authentic and also more accessible. So that weight was already on my shoulders, and I was nervous going in. I wanted to put my entire heart, mind, body, and soul into it, and so I think we all did that, and I was really blessed to be around such a committed, dynamic, fantastic group of individuals, because anytime that I doubted myself, anytime I came up against a challenge, I could go to Russell, I could go to Regina, I could say, I'm having doubt around this, and they would hand me tools and words of advice and just encourage me and be such a source of strength and a backbone for me. And I think those dynamics started mirroring the story, and the story fed into the dynamics, and it became this kind of beautiful circle of life. And it came to all of us as a community, you know, because we really became a community through the process of making this. Just knowing that we're striving towards this one unified goal, and that we were there to support each other through it. Knowing that heading into a project that is as weighty as this, that I was already facing a lot of doubt from other people. So that was something that I had to overcome before/while we were filming, and I think that it taught me a lot. It's a really sensitive topic, and it was the first time in my life that I'd ever had my blackness questioned, and that was challenging because I had never come up against that before. I always have walked in the world as a black person. I've never thought of myself as not being black enough. That was something, that's never something that crossed my mind. So it was the first time that question was raised. And ironically enough, it's something that Starr faces in the film. When she's in her neighborhood, the kids make fun of her. They say, oh, you're not black enough, or you talk like the white kids, or you listen to indie rock, and those types of things. So there's a parallel between that and my experience being called too light-skinned for the role. And I have a great sensitivity towards the place from which that comes. It's a place of pain. It's a result of people being frustrated because they are navigating a colorist system at all times, and that's painful. And so I understand why that pain exists. But I wouldn't have done this if I didn't think that I was right, ever. I never would have done this. And there was a point in time where I came to the studio, I came to George, and I said, and Angie, and I said, Angie, look, if you agree with these queries and you feel like I don't accurately represent Starr, if you feel like I don't look like her, tell me, and I will not do this project. I will drop out, even though it is my favorite book in the world, even though I know that I have lived such a similar experience to her. I can bring a lot of authenticity to it. I won't do it. And she said, what?
Yeah.
She said, what? You're worried about what? She said, I know that you can bring your authentic self to this, and I've never questioned that you were the wrong person for Starr. Never questioned that you were the right person for Starr.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey,